Welcome to Live the Dream with yours truly, Marty Kaiser. Buckle up and let's get started. Happy Friday, everyone. This is Marty Kaiser with our Friday edition of Real Estate Tidbits. Hope everyone's doing well and enjoying. Our weather has suddenly gotten a little bit warmer, which is a welcome relief from the few cold days we had. We skipped last week's podcast just due to a variety of conflicts, so apologies for that. I'm going to start off with a little bit about sports update. I'm sure a lot of you have viewed the Super Bowl this past Sunday. That was between Seattle and, can't even remember who the losing team was, New England Patriots. It was one of the most boring Super Bowls I've seen, quite honestly. I had picked Seattle to win the game, but I thought it would be a more competitive game. The final score was about a 2-touchdown margin, but really the game wasn't even as close as that. Seattle was definitely a superior team, and I think over the course of the year they were the best team in the NFL. The biggest difference in this game in terms of if you had to pick out one area was the New England offensive line was just severely overmatched. So they didn't have the quarterback, Drake May, who was also playing with an injured shoulder, didn't have adequate time to throw the ball. I also felt that Seattle dramatically outcoached New England. They put in some defensive wrinkles in the game, and the New England coaching staff just didn't do a good job of adjusting to it. That was a little surprising because New England does have good coaches. Mike Vrabel's an excellent head coach, and Josh McDaniels an excellent offensive coordinator. But in this particular game, they were severely outmatched. So anyway, the season's over, and now it's on to basketball. The only quick update in basketball, they're going to the All-Star break this weekend, is the local team, the Orlando Magic, is still struggling. They did win 3 out of their last 4 games, which on the surface seems good. But they played all poor teams, and a lot of the teams were what we call tanking, meaning that they're not really going all out to win games because they're trying to have a poor record to get a top draft pick in the upcoming draft. That's probably the biggest problem in the NBA right now is tanking. It's gotten more and more of a problem. Right now we're only in February and the season goes till the end of April and teams are tanking already. And think about it as a consumer. If you're the kind of person that likes going to the games in person, these games are not inexpensive. So you're paying $100 plus a ticket, food, parking. It's not an inexpensive evening. And then you go to a game and you may see a team sit a bunch of starters. Other teams will say it's a load management, so they rest their players. It's just really gotten ridiculous in terms of what's going on in the NBA. I know myself, I'm a big NBA fan, and I used to have season tickets to the Magic, but I haven't gone to a game in a couple of years. Just because 2 reasons. What I mentioned to you, the lack of effort and a lot of the tanking. If you go to late season games, it's even worse. And in our case here locally, the Orlando Magic's kind of been an up and down mediocre team. So they don't really provide enough excitement and skill level. This year's team on paper looked like it should have been a very solid team. They have had a lot of injuries, as I've mentioned in previous podcasts, but they're just not getting it together. And I think you have to look at upper management and the coaching staff. They just don't seem to have that synergistic effect where they're playing up to their skill level on paper. And the coaching staff really seems to be having a hard time motivating the players. Their defensive effort and their defensive results have just been very disappointing. As in previous years, the Magic were one of the better defensive teams in the NBA. But this year they've been severely lacking. And unless they have a dramatic turnaround after the All-Star break, I'm afraid they're going to have to make a change in their coaching staff, and they should even look at upper management because some of their draft picks, with having such great draft positions over the last few years, the draft results have been up and down. So anyway, I'm hoping that they improve over the second half, but I'm not overly optimistic about it. So now we're going to transition a little bit into real estate. We had some real estate and economic news this week, and it was disappointing. Real estate-wise, nationally, was about 8% down from December's, and it was also significantly down from a year ago in January. And what's the reason for that? Well, I think it's all speculative at this point, but I think it has to do with people's concern about where the United States is headed, our employment news, and the overall economy. I'll start off with employment. Statistics can sometimes be manipulated, and they also can be deceiving. So our unemployment rate is 4.3 right now based on the latest jobs report, which is not horrible. We did gain some jobs last month, but well below what was expected. But I guess the biggest imbalance and the biggest concern is where the jobs are coming from. We had a huge gain in jobs in the healthcare industry, but the rest of the industries all suffered a significant decline. So it's concerning because it's a big imbalance. You know, healthcare obviously is a very specific segment. And obviously it's good that people want to get into healthcare because we always need good doctors, support staff, nurses, etc. But that particular sector is not really indicative of the rest of the economy and the employment. So you can speculate a couple things about that. Number one, just the overall economy during the first year of the Trump administration, I think by all non-biased experts, has been very disappointing. He ran basically on two issues: immigration and improving the economics, and also lowering prices of household goods, food, etc. And they've been unsuccessful, and it's very clear by what's going on. They've been unsuccessful in improving the economy. They've been unsuccessful in dramatically, or not even dramatically, but they really haven't lowered food prices at all, and a lot of the other household goods that the average household relies on. And we continue to have a huge imbalance in our economy. Everybody working in the Trump administration refers back to how we're doing great in the stock market. The stock market exceeded 50,000. And that's all true. However, that being said, most of the people that are benefiting from the stock market are not the average citizen. They're the folks that have a lot of income. Many of them are millionaires, etc. And so they're greatly benefiting from that. But the average household really is not, and it really doesn't impact their day-to-day business much. Also, the spread between the average household and the wealthy is continuing to widen, and it's very disturbing because the middle class is the ones that really support the economy. They're the majority of folks, and policies and economics are not really taking care of that segment of the population. You hear more and more about the billionaires in our economy, and that's great, but I think, at some point you don't need all that money. And I'm not suggesting it should be redistributed by the government, but the current policies that are being followed in our government are they're not working. To transition to that, but still stay somewhat in social news and government news. I'm sure everybody is heard about Savannah Guthrie's mom's kidnapping. It's now going on 2 weeks, and they had a little bit of information that came out. They showed some pictures of the criminal who broke into her house and kidnapped her, and they found what they hope to be a glove of the perpetrator, that maybe they can do some DNA matching and such. But it's a very sad story. It's been so long that I think a lot of people, unfortunately, are fearing the worst for Mrs. Guthrie. Usually when somebody is gone this long in this type of situation, it doesn't bode well for them. So we'll just have our prayers and thoughts to the Guthrie family and hope that the outcome is better than I expect. As you probably maybe read or saw yesterday, they had Senate hearings continuing about the Epstein case, which seems to gain more and more questions instead of answers from our government. You know, this was a case that's, Epstein perpetrated these horrific things to young women, and I think he committed suicide now, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago, but this thing still stays in the news. And the reporting that, the reports that finally have come out after being hidden for all this time, they've had a lot of redactions, and they've just been done in a very haphazard fashion, and they're not helping the victims at all, and they're not giving us any detailed information about some of the high-profile people that should be prosecuted for these horrific acts. So they had the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, under questioning by the congressional committees yesterday, and I was just scratching my head. I've always felt that Pam Bondi was a horrible selection, really not qualified. She's just basically a mouthpiece for the president, and she has done very little admirable things. Well, her behavior yesterday bordered on the insane. I have never seen during my lifetime somebody in an upper level of government that was so unprofessional, antagonistic, didn't answer the questions, tried to completely change the subject matter, referred back to things that have no bearing on what they were questioning her about. She tried to talk about how good the stock market is. Well, that's irrelevant because they were trying to question her on why the Justice Department and her office specifically has done all these unprofessional and irregular type of activities. And she completely lost her cool, was insulting people that were questioning her, didn't answer any of the questions directly, and I was embarrassed. But this is a continuation of the unprofessionalism and incompetence that our cabinet has. I have never seen an overall worse cabinet. I think you're going to see over the next 3 months or so a lot of these people either stepping down or resigning just because of they're unqualified, incompetent, unprofessional. A couple to name a few are Bondi, of course, Pete Hegseth, our Secretary of Defense, and Heidi Noem, who's in charge of all the immigration things with Homeland Security and stuff. And that continues to be an abomination with all the atrocities that have taken place. And they had a case yesterday where they tried to charge somebody with a bunch of charges, and she had been shot 5 times. And when they actually saw the videotape that came out, they dropped the charges because it was such an abomination how she was treated. And fortunately, she didn't get killed. But the ICE department continues to be untrained, unprofessional, chooses violence over trying to do their job. It's one thing if, as a law enforcement person, you're truly in danger. You have to protect yourself, of course. But these incidents that continue to show up are just I mean, they're irrefutable when you actually watch the video. And then, of course, think about if you were a victim of this. And in a few cases, these have been women, usually by themselves, and these masked people approach them and take aggressive, violent actions. This is not the America that I grew up with, and there doesn't seem to be any let up with it. It's very not only disappointing, but I think it's scary to the average citizen. This could technically happen to anybody. If somebody pulls you over for anything just because they don't like the way you look, and you try to question, well, why am I being pulled over like this? You're putting your health and life in jeopardy. So it's very concerning. You know, what happened, I'll give a couple terms here: civility, unprofessionalism, and embarrassment. I think you're continuing to see these type of activities in our society right now. So that's some observations that I had about our government. I'll close with some real estate updates. With my personal experiences recently in the Orlando market in real estate, I've definitely seen a dichotomy. What do I mean by that? Well, forgetting all the statistical data that you read, the dichotomy is if you have a nice property that's properly marketed, properly staged, properly priced, it's still selling pretty rapidly. The trouble is a lot of the homes are not meeting that criteria. They start off, they're either overpriced, they don't present favorably, maybe they're hard to get access to. They're just not optimally marketed. And accordingly, they're sitting and not selling. So you see the time on the market has increased. You see the prices of these type of homes being decreased, and ultimately they either are unsuccessful during their time on the market, or if they do sell, not only has it taken a lot longer, but the prices have been adjusted to levels that are below what they should have sold for had they been priced properly to start with. And this seems to be an ongoing thing. I think it's a combination of two factors. Number one, I think a lot of sellers continue to be unrealistic, and they just want to ignore data. You might show somebody pretty irrefutable data that shows a certain pattern and shows a certain pricing strategy that would be most effective, but the homeowner says, well, my house is worth more, and they can't really justify why it's worth more. They just say it's worth more and they want more money out of the sale. And it's certainly their right to price the home wherever they want to, because, you know, they have the final say. But if they're going to chat with a professional person, it's like when you go to the doctor and the doctor gives you a prognosis or it gives you a course of action to continue or improve your health. If you feel that doctor is knowledgeable, maybe he was recommended to you, it seems like it would be foolhardy not to listen to the doctor's recommendations. Well, the same token is if you're dealing with a real estate professional and they give you sound advice with facts and data, it would seem like you should give them strong consideration. You know, I've had a couple situations recently on a personal level. Like I had one where it was a nice house. The seller had done all the things that I had recommended. We were in total sync on the strategy for their house. We put it on the market. We had a lot of activity from the start. We got multiple offers on it, and we went under contract quickly for a price above asking price. Now, not every situation works that perfectly, but that's the intent, and that house worked exactly as I had hoped it would, and I explained to the seller that I thought it would. Another situation, I'm getting a new customer who had been on the market with another agent, but she had some issues that needed addressing, and she asked for help with vendors, contractors, etc. And the agent told her to go and look it up on AI or just Google and see if she could find a good contractor. Well, I won't even comment on the advice that she received, but when a customer hires someone like myself, part of our services are try to help them out when these situations come up. If they need plumbing services, if they need a good roofer, things of that nature, it's our job to recommend one. Now, if it's in a trade where we don't have one for some reason, I always try to do my own research. I ask for referrals from other agents I know. I also do my own online research. That's part of my job. So when people ask me, well, why should I hire you? I have a whole litany of things that I explain to them. And so when they hire my services, I try to make the process as easy as I can for that person. I put the brunt of the efforts to successfully sell their house on my shoulders because that's what they're hiring and paying me for. Also, when it comes to some of these ancillary services, like ensuring we're going to get a good appraisal, ensuring that the inspection doesn't have things in there that are poorly explained, because many times inspectors word their inspections in such a way that they sound much more negative than they were. So as part of our job to hopefully be the mediator and not only try to get a meeting of the minds on some of these issues, but to try to explain in a common sense, professional, calm manner, while maybe one side or the other is overreacting rather. And at the end of the day, we want to try to mediate a solution because it doesn't do anybody any good. From the buyer's standpoint, they've expended money on these inspections and they've gotten themselves excited about buying a property. And then if it falls through, they're going to be very disappointed and out money. And of course, for the seller, they're hiring us to successfully sell their house because they had plans, whether it's to buy a different house, whether they're relocating to another state, whether they're downsizing, whatever the case may be. So they're going to be equally disappointed if a deal falls through. So that's why it takes that extra effort on our part to make things happen. And of course, in our society, people tend to be a lot more adversarial, unfortunately, nowadays. So it takes even more skill and experience. So like when people tell me some of these experiences that they have and they're disappointed by it, I calmly explain to them that, in any industry, you're going to have some top flight individuals and you're going to have some individuals that maybe aren't very good at their jobs, whether it's other real estate agents, whether it's appraisers, whether it's home inspectors, whether it's mortgage professionals. So that's why it's important to affiliate yourself with skilled, experienced, successful people that have a track record. And, a lot of companies nowadays, they're interested mainly in what I call increasing their agent count. So they like to brag how they've grown by X number of agents, and that's great, but I always have two questions in those situations. How many of your agents are actually making a living? How many are staying on at your company past 1 year? And what type of experience level do they have, and what type of training are you providing for folks? Those things are all very important, and they have a high correlation with their success rate and their professionalism. I know I jumped around a little bit today because I've got a lot of things I was thinking of, and with such a unusual circumstances that we deal with in society, sometimes I'll jump around from one topic to another. In conclusion, I hope everyone's doing well. Enjoy our good weather. Be safe. And this is Marty Kaiser out.